Hi, everyone. Welcome back to day 2 of Redefine 2021, INE's inaugural keynote conference. I'm Catherine Brown, Public Relations Director here at INE. We're so excited you're back with us. According to CyberSeek, there are 500,000 cybersecurity jobs in the U.S. alone that can't be filled, and there are an estimated 3 million plus vacancies worldwide. All that means a successful and, more importantly, a satisfying career is there for you to grab. Today, we're going to look at the skills that recruiters are looking for and some ways that you can maximize your chances of getting a great job and really excelling in an IT career. We're joined by some fantastic minds today, some of the greatest people in this space. Dr. Gerald Auger is Chief Content Creator for the information security YouTube channel Simply Cyber. It's dedicated to helping those in the information security field. He's had more than 16 years of experience and has worked as an information security analyst, senior information security engineer, information security architect, and much more. Jerry also holds a number of certifications. We're also joined by Joe Hudson, the principal recruiting lead for HuntSource. He's a former elementary school teacher who is now dedicated to helping people explore the security job market with as much information as possible. Joe especially loves the moving target aspect of cybersecurity and is a passionate voice in the industry. We're also joined by Sunil Sood, an executive recruiter for Sood Recruiting. He specializes in recruiting analytic talent in financial services, e-commerce, retail, healthcare, and much more. He's also worked at Citigroup and eBay. Gentlemen, we are so excited to have all of you here with us and excited to hear what you have to say.
Thanks for the opportunity, Catherine.
Yeah.
All right. I know we've gone through a lot of prep, and so the three of you have no shortage of expertise and information to share. We have a lot of students joining us today. Obviously, INE is a training firm, and a lot of our students and clients are interested in starting their journey or really accelerating their journey. So I wanted to find out from you guys right out of the gate, what is the one essential skill that recruiters and organizations are looking for in tech talent, regardless of the industry or the skill level of the person we're talking about? Sunil, we can begin with you.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Catherine. So I think, one always is very pumped and enthused to get their technical chops, learn Python, or this is from a data science perspective. But oftentimes I tell a lot of my candidates is likability. You have to be able to really connect with your stakeholders or other people that you're going to be partnering with. And I think likability is oftentimes missed. People are always coming to me, Sunil, should I learn R? Should I learn Python? Should I learn Tableau? I said, you can do all that, but be able to connect with people, and likability to me is a very strong soft skill that is oftentimes overlooked.
Yeah, Joe, I know when on one of our pre-calls, you mentioned those soft skills are really critical.
Yeah, and they're not things that you can just snap your fingers and learn overnight. I think that there's a lot of perception about what a security job looks like. And, I don't think a lot of people are necessarily envisioning the dialogue, the discussions with business. I mean, you can have all these ideas for what you want to do in a security environment, but if you don't have the backing or really the understanding and connection with the business, you're on a fruitless journey, probably. And so I think having some soft skills in terms of understanding like your audience and how to have certain types of conversations, whether it's very high level or it's getting down to the really nitty gritty of the tech stuff, it's just not easy for everyone. It's not natural for everyone, but I think that there's a bigger emphasis on it these days, and there's more resources for where you can get advice from, even people like Jerry.
Yeah, and exactly. That's a perfect segue, Joe. To your point, I mean, you can't really learn these, but you can get expert advice from people who have been successful in the field. And Jerry, you're certainly one of those people and one of the biggest names.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, on Simply Cyber, we try to bring all of that opportunity to learn different tools and labs and get some of these soft skills, or call them out at least for their importance. And just to kind of piggyback on the question, because I really feel it's important, at least from my perspective, because I've built intern programs, I've hired people, and I know Sunil and Joe have worked with people. One of the kind of hidden talents or skills or things that I really am drawn to and like in a candidate is initiative. Are you the individual who can take initiative and you have tried to build your own lab or drive yourself to check out different platforms? And even if you're not an expert at any of them, are you taking the initiative? Because in the world of cybersecurity, it's very fast moving. And if you can take initiative, that's a huge value add to me, because I can tell you, hey, like we're going to start doing this, or we're looking at that. And I can just expect you to go off and take the initiative and get a little bit more information, so you can come and deliver value in whatever capacity that is. And I know a lot of people, they may not identify initiative, but when you hear it or see it, you recognize it. And I really feel like that's an important thing that people should be at least mindful of when they're either developing themselves professionally or kind of pitching themselves to a recruiter or to a potential employer. Highlight those activities of yours that are initiatives that you've taken.
Yeah, and just to stay on that thread, Jerry, you talk about initiative and all the different things that people can do. Should students assume that a college education, a degree, is essential to getting hired in the tech industry? And if it's not essential, what are some other paths that are acceptable and that are considered either equal or even superior by hiring managers?
Yeah, and I think we'll go around the horn on this one. So just for full clarity on my perspective, I have worked exclusively in the cybersecurity space for 16 plus years. So this is very much focused and filtered around that qualification. So in cybersecurity, there are a ton of super successful, great practitioners that do not even have a college degree. I know some that don't have a high school degree. Okay, so the concept of this traditional 4-year degree, it has its place in the field. So I'm not going to discount it and say that it's a waste of time. But if you want to become specialized, if you found what you like, there is so much just labs and training platforms and ways to get access to education and curriculum to be able to develop yourself. And then you can get certifications which effectively can inform HR or a hiring manager or recruiter or whatever, that you have mastered whatever that level of education is for that certification, which allows you to shortcut kind of what a bachelor's degree is, right? So with a bachelor's degree, it takes you 4 years before you have that piece of paper. With certs, you could go 3-6 months, you get a cert, 3-6 months, get a cert, you start building and you start differentiating yourself from other candidates in the pool. So I'll say that, especially in cybersecurity, there is so much opportunity for you to not choose that traditional path and be incredibly successful.
And Joe, I know you don't have any strong thoughts on this whatsoever.
No, this has been a really intense dialogue with some people. I've actually had some conversations with other recruiters about this. Like, what are you guys seeing with your clients? And the problem, I think, really is the disconnect in messaging between hiring managers' expectations and HR, and then also that filtering through external recruiters like myself or like Sunil. That, he obviously deals with it with a different set of expectations, but I'll see it in job descriptions all the time where it says they need a degree. You talk to HR and they say, yeah, we're looking for a degree in one of these domains. You talk to the hiring manager and they kind of laugh. They're like, I don't care at all. Now, there's value in it for sure. I got a college education and I came away with some great abilities to learn how to learn, the social aspects and everything. There's plenty of value in it, but I think that we'll see a changing of the guard. I think you're going to have a wave of people that do break through that ceiling. They're going to be able to get those jobs. They don't have the degree. Now you have internal champions for thinking differently inside, and you have a changing of sort of the expectations with at least some companies that will open up the opportunities. I've got a 6-year-old son. I'm thinking about college for him already, and I'm thinking, what will college look like in 12 years? Will it be affordable? Will it be free? Will it be just incredible? Will it be useless? It's unreal if you think 12 years ago what it looked like compared to what it is now. And so, no, I don't think it's going to be an absolute expectation with most companies. Some, you're not going to get around it. Cross them off your list if you don't have it. Move on.
I love that phrase that you use, internal champions, and I think you hit the nail on the head there, Joe, when you talk about how quickly it's changing and how it really is kind of due for a reckoning when you talk about higher education. Sunil, you come at this from a data science perspective, specifically.
Right. So I definitely agree with Jerry and Joe that the landscape on higher education is changing. However, in data science, which is my area of recruitment, Unfortunately, a lot of hiring managers still look at that as a prerequisite. I, as a former data scientist, had my bachelor's, but now as I'm recruiting the past 10 years or so, it is pretty much a staple. It is a must-have, a master's. Now, are things changing? Absolutely. But right now, in terms of the market today, hiring managers are really fixed in and zoned in on a master's degree, partly because data science is an intersection between statistics, mathematics, and comp sci. So the core principles are needed. But again, once you have a couple of years of experience, it's going to really come down to your prior experiences.
Yeah, and you mentioned that brand recognition is very important in that field. It's interesting to hear these different perspectives from the different disciplines, and I'm sure as students are listening and thinking about what field they want to go into, this is tremendously valuable information for them to know, because it really does differ depending on which specialty that you go into. When we look at the fields that are growing tremendously, leaps and bounds, the IT industry as a whole is having, I guess you could say, is kind of having a moment, although it's been that way for a long time, but it's really growing. What fields do you see within that industry that are really taking off? Joe, we can start with you.
Cloud. I mean, I think it's pretty easy to say that in the last 2 years of what I've been doing, I mean, I remember the first position I got, which was a cloud architect role, and the position was brand new in the company. This is a couple years ago. It's probably 2 years ago, and they didn't even know how to vet the person. So you've got someone that's supposed to come in and be an evangelist for something that the company doesn't know how to qualify. The person that's supposed to do it probably has done some things for cloud the last few years, but maybe was winging it, because cloud's been around, but you don't have as big of an emphasis. Now we're looking at like 90% of every company is doing something with cloud. And so 2 years ago, if someone asked me, hey, how do I get started? I'm like, well, if you're a blank slate, go get your CCNA and your Security Plus. I was literally just an echo of 20 years of people telling everybody to do that, because that's kind of what was offered for a long time. If you're a blank slate now, I recommend go get some cloud. If you don't like it, great. There's plenty of other things to do. But I absolutely feel like that is a gateway into many types of roles, whether it's labeled as cybersecurity, you're going to be touching on security, and the overlap, it becomes more apparent day by day. So, I think it's a great place to start. Obviously, there's plenty of trainings out there that you can get access to and see how deep you want to go with it. But everybody's doing something with cloud. Everybody.
Yeah, and Jerry, they are also interconnected, to Joe's point.
Yeah, absolutely. I was gonna, if you came to me first, I was also gonna say cloud. But one of the things that I think the audience would really appreciate to think about is that, cloud is so new that it's a level set on how long someone's been in the industry. So again, I've been in the industry for 16 years. I do not have 16 years of cloud experience. I have a couple years, right? So if you jump in right now and focus on cloud, you will be more competitive. Like your ability to compete with people who have already been in the industry for a long period of time that would have that years of experience, that doesn't matter because they don't have years of experience in cloud. And you may not fully appreciate this, but cloud is a completely different paradigm from traditional infrastructure, right? It used to be building big walls around like a moat around the castle and protecting it that way. And now it's much more zero trust. It's all about the specific access, right? So the whole paradigm of not just where the computes and the data is stored, but also on your approach to securing it effectively and in a way that the business can accept is totally different. So if you can target cloud now, and I might even go as far as to say target a specific platform, right? So AWS, Google Cloud, and Microsoft Azure are the three big players, right? There's a couple other ones, but like if you get specialized in one of those specifically, I mean, I'm not saying you can write your own check, but like there's not a lot of people with those specific advanced skills. So it's a huge opportunity, especially if you mess around in there and you find yourself kind of drawn to it naturally and you find a natural passion for it. It's just a really great opportunity at this specific time in like our society, basically.
So I just want to follow up on that, Jerry. You would advise people to take a very narrow and really expertise path as opposed to taking a broader, learning a lot about everything, basically. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, okay, so yes and no. So let me preface it by saying you do need to understand some fundamental foundational things, right? So if you're going to work in cybersecurity, you have to have some comprehension of how like networking works, like actual computers, the way they talk to each other. You don't got to be a network engineer, but you have to understand some networking, right? Now, you have to understand some basic fundamental information security concepts, right? The CIA triad. We all have heard that a million times, but you need to know what that means. Then once you get that, foundation, the house you're going to build on top of that foundation, let's make that a specialized house. Because if you're going to build an AWS career house, right, and you're going to be a specialist in that, that's awesome. I'm telling you, the way AWS approaches their cloud solution is different completely from the way that Azure is built, right? So you can't become a jack. I mean, you could be a jack of all trades, but your marketability and the ability to differentiate yourself as a candidate among other people competing for the job gets diluted because you have a little bit of everything. And I'm just saying, like Azure, most of the corporate people, I'd be curious in Joe and Sunil's experience with actual jobs out there, but like in my experience, most of corporate America is moving to Azure, and a lot of like SaaS products that may have, cybersecurity people who kind of partner with the dev people are working in the AWS space. And Google is starting to emerge kind of more on the competitive with AWS and less on Azure. Azure is more like corporate America, and AWS is more like tech startup. That's what I would say.
Interesting, and I do want to hear from Sunil and Joe on your perspectives there, because I think you bring up a really interesting point, Jerry, in that what are you guys seeing in terms of how these specific products are being used in the real world, Sunil?
Yeah, so before I answer Jerry's question, the question about which jobs in technology are really getting a lot of traction for me, I think anything related with data, you're going to have a great career, right? You can be a data scientist, you can get into business intelligence, security, or even on the infrastructure and architecture side. The common denominator is data. So all students out there, if you want to make a pretty penny and have a great career, data is, in my opinion, the way to go. Now, in terms of answering Jerry's question, the recs that I used to get a couple of years ago were hardcore heavy AWS focus in terms of cloud. I can honestly say within the past year and a half, that dynamic has shifted towards Microsoft's Azure. So FY tip to all the students out there, both are great to learn, but Azure is definitely, or Azure as they say, is gaining more traction.
I got that as well. I'm glad to actually hear you say that, because I've been kind of discovering that myself, is there's a bit of a shift. AWS has actually held a major chunk of the market. I think it's been like 60+%. We've got a couple clients that are like 2 years deep into a major AWS migration and have scrapped those plans entirely. And they're either going another route. I know one that's going IBM Cloud Financial, kind of good luck finding all the experts out there with IBM Cloud Financial experience. But at some point that's going to be where they need to get. But we have clients as well that as they dive deeper into their massive plans, they're like, oh, shoot, this is actually a better situation for Azure. Most shops have some Azure in it, but AWS, I agree, has been kind of dominating. But if Sunil's seeing that, that's really cool, because that's what I've been seeing over the last year to year and a half is a shift. GCP is actually making its mark in some very big organizations, some very large retail companies specifically. So I just think that when it comes to picking your cloud, I think you are better off picking one and trying to get some expertise in that. They are different. AWS has 210 services or something like that now. And by the time we're done with this show, it might be like 220. But you have clients that are discovering they have opportunities for other cloud providers and solutions to come in. So if you get some experience in two, you kind of 90% expertise in one and 10%, I can play in that field in the other one, you'll probably find some opportunities to jump in projects that are valuable. And just by studying the other one, you might discover you actually love learning more about that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's very clear is that there are so many opportunities, and we are still in the infancy of so many of these industries, and have really a huge opportunity, especially for people who are just getting into it, to grow and really, to borrow your phrase, actually forget which one of you said it, but maybe Joe, write your own paycheck. You know, I think it's a great opportunity for students, and so glad to see that so many are tuning in. I mentioned a statistic at the beginning of this show that it's estimated more than 500,000 open cybersecurity jobs in the U.S. alone. Sunil, I know that you're mainly in data science, but I want to start with you here and branch out, because I know that IT jobs as a whole are really surging right now. Do you find these statistics reflective of the job market at the entry level, or do you find that when you hear about all these available IT jobs and data science and cybersecurity jobs, are those more specialized jobs?
Yeah, you know, with statistics, honestly, everywhere, every publication you look at or view, statistics are going to differ, right? So I don't really hold a lot of value in statistics per se, but as you know, as a recruiter, I can say this: when we were in April, May of 2020, in the midst of a pandemic, right? I had many data science, data analyst positions that clients were asking for help on. So to me, that's a key barometer to show me that this is a hot field. Again, to answer your question, I don't really get caught up on statistics, but I see the proof in the pudding. When I'm looking at postings, there's a lot of demand for these types of roles.
Jerry, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the job, sorry about that, my mute button stuck there. So yeah, as far as
happens to all of us, right, in this new virtual world that we live in.
Yes, seriously. So yeah, no, I mean, as far as the job market goes, I mean, there are tons of jobs. I think a couple things that really mislead or skew the numbers are one, people are looking for, and I know Joe's talked about this ad nauseum on the different platforms we've been together with, but like a lot of the jobs are at the top level, but they're asking for entry level. Like there's a disconnect here between, we want like a security practitioner, but we don't want to pay for one. So we'll make it an entry level position, but we'll ask for all of these outrageous kind of qualifications, requirements, things that don't even map. Like we need a blue team person or a defender, but we're looking for, OSCP because we've heard that that's an awesome certification. So you get this disconnect where it's not truly a, 500,000 or 500,000 open jobs, because they're not getting filled because the people don't exist that qual is actually trying to seek. And that's part of the problem that the information security industry needs to really reconcile is, getting those recs properly written to map to what the actual need is for the organization versus, some copy paste or, taking two different roles and kind of merging them together in one role and then throwing it out there and hoping a candidate meets that requirement, because there's so many people unemployed. There must be someone out there to meet this requirement. And I think, there isn't, because that person doesn't exist. And that's part of the challenge that we need to reconcile here. But, to Joe's point that he mentioned earlier, some of these requirements are becoming more soft requirements, like the bachelor's degree. I don't actually need a bachelor's degree. I know it says it, but what I really need is X, Y, and Z, and you have that candidate. So let's talk and at least have the discussion.
Call this your most favorite and least favorite topic.
Oh yeah, with the statistics. I remember when I first got here to HuntSource 4 years ago, and I was a stat dweeb, and I was just this echoing, hey, stat, and then I found myself getting nauseous just listening to myself, because I was like, I don't believe any of this. And I think it's ridiculous to try to put a number out there. First of all, somebody's getting breached while we're talking right now. And in that breach, or coming out of that, there's going to be 20 new hires that are needed. That company probably has not ever hired in mass the way that they're going to have to. They don't really know what they're going to need. They don't have a leader that's probably well equipped to deal with this situation. So they're going to have attrition. This is nonstop moving. To say 500,000, I think it's just this arbitrary number that was probably a product of a survey run in 2019. You have CNN, you've got NBC, and they are just copy pasting and they're sharing it again, and then everybody believes it. I've talked to a bazillion, trillion, gazillion people that are extremely qualified, but they don't meet the metrics that these job descriptions are requiring, as Jerry had just talked about. It's not that the people aren't qualified. They're not qualified for this incorrectly typed job description that when you actually go to the manager, like, I need like 3 or 4 of those skills. Truly, this is written for what we hope this person to look like in 2 years. That communication breaks down between HR and the hiring manager. It's not filtered to the recruiting teams correctly. Those jobs last open for 4 months, which should be illegal in this country. I think if a company can't hire somebody in 4 months, fine them. That's ridiculous. There is an unbelievable amount of talent out there. There are platforms like I&E that is continually evolving, changing with the market, offering trainings for the market. People are going and getting these things. What do you want from me, job market? That's basically what people are saying. I think the statistics are ridiculous, to put it nicely.
Think is the burden on business leaders and recruiters and HR departments to work together and try to somehow break this cycle?
I mean, I think you have to break old habits. We have job descriptions that we see like, okay, qualifications. Well, I know I always type bachelor's degree first, so I'm going to lead off with that. 4+ years of experience doing this. It's this repetitive process. Whereas, wouldn't it be really cool if you could just like put up a job description that says security job? We are willing to consider a number of levels and skills. Now, you can't hire like that, but I bet you can find some incredible talent that way. And I bet people are going to be applying to certain jobs that they might not go for because they're so used to getting rejected time and time and time and time again for something that they feel like they're pretty qualified for on paper. So now they start to get, really deterred about this process. They think, well, this is probably a waste of my time. The partnerships between recruiting and HR, if HR is working with an external firm like myself or Sunil, we are an extension of your company. We're not just somebody trying to get a paycheck. Now, there are some firms that are like that, but if you come to the table with that distrust, it's already a losing equation. You've got people that are just trying to prove that they're not out for just a paycheck, as opposed to saying, hey, what are really your pain points? Like, what's really going well? What do you see as big initiatives right now? Those conversations between the recruiting firms and the hiring managers, they have to happen. I mean, my firm, we won't prioritize anything as a top rec if we're not talking to the managers. We need to hear those pain points from those people. So much gets lost in translation in that HR process. And most of the HR people, they're either not asking the questions or their hiring managers are like, they just are incompetent and they don't even give them the time of the day. There needs to be a forced dialogue. I say get all 3 parties in the exact same room, but there are deliverables and milestones that you should be hitting. And if you're not hitting them, there needs to be big changes made.
Directly to the students particularly that are watching this, because we've talked a lot about the challenges and the problems and some of the big industry things that need to be fixed. But the reality is these problems aren't going to be fixed overnight, right? And students are still out there and professionals are still out there working every single day to better their careers, to take training, to break into the industry. So how can students navigate the current landscape with all the challenges that exist today? How can they work through that to give themselves the best chance to succeed? Sunil, I'd love to start with you here.
And I don't want any of the students' dad over here or, like guardian, but in reality, and this is a conversation I have with my 9.5-year-old son, right? He's a big baseball player. Everyone's going to practice. Everyone's going to the game. For students are always trying to get into the best school they can get into. They're going to try to get the best internships they can land. We know those are the things that one needs to do to get their first gig out of college or any school, right? My thing is, you have to do things that others are not doing. For example, join meetups, join maybe some special groups, maybe, take some enrichment programs through I&E, right? Or those, certificate programs that show to hiring managers, you know what? Check, graduated a 4-year school. Check, had some cool internships. Check, you know what? This candidate, this prospective employee has gone above and beyond and taken these courses. To me, go above the norm. If you do that, you will set yourself up for success.
Love your thoughts on this as well.
Me? I'm sorry, it cut out. Was it me, Catherine?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I'd love to give my thoughts on this. So based on what Sunil just said, if you abstract out, he basically said, take initiative, be proactive. Echoing back what we just said a few minutes ago about how important initiative is to differentiate yourself. It's not just taking the initiative, but it's the things you accomplish by taking that initiative, right? So he said join meetups. This is arguably one of the most important things that I would like to communicate to you today. Joe just mentioned the big problem with all these unfilled jobs is there's a disconnect between the candidate who's got skills and the hiring manager who needs those skills, because they have to go through this pipe of HR and corporate bureaucracy and all this other stuff, and it gets muddled along the way. So how do you hack that, right? The way you hack it is by getting to the hiring manager and actually having a conversation with them. And that happens at these networking events, whether it's a ISC Squared chapter meetup, or it's a local B-sides, or any security conference, or it's just something organic that you stand up in your community because you're into cybersecurity. It could even be virtual, right? There's Discord servers all over the place. I just joined Trusted Sex earlier today. Great bunch of people in there. Black Hills got a great one, right? You start connecting, you start finding out about opportunities, right? And then the person that you've connected with who has an opportunity, you have a conversation with, they identify, oh, this guy's got, or this lady's got the talent. I need this candidate. Then they go to the hiring manager and say, hey, listen, or they go to the HR and say, listen, I've got a candidate, right? This is what they can do. This is actually what I need. How do we get there? Let's go through whatever requirements, bureaucratic workflows we got to go through, but this is what I want right here. And boom, you just hack the system. And I honestly feel there's no empirical evidence to support this claim, but I honestly feel 50% of people in the cybersecurity industry, right? So let's qualify it. 50% of people who work in the cybersecurity industry got their job because of a networked connection, not because of like a cold application to an open rec.
And that's such a great point. And Joe, that gets right back to what we were talking about in the beginning of this talk, which was those soft skills and how important they are.
Yeah, I mean, I think it takes a certain level of confidence to reach out to someone. It takes confidence to get in front of someone. Sitting here in front of this camera is not my natural thing. I wake up and feel comfortable doing. But kind of going back to what Sunil said and putting yourself out there and getting in meetups. And Jerry, I remember, I think it was December last year, you had a live stream and I was in your little chat box, just answering questions from a recruiting perspective as people were ripping off the questions. And obviously you couldn't get to all of them. And there was this wonderful woman that was just watching your show. She sent me a LinkedIn connection and said, hey, thanks for all the answers on Jerry's thing. I said, hey, I noticed you're in Canada and it looks like you went to school for this one skill set. I actually happen to have some jobs up there right now. And we got her a job within 2 weeks. But it was really cool to be able to pitch her in that way to the client and say, hey, kind of a unique way I came across this person. And we talked at 7:30 that night, and she got a job. But that just came purely out of her putting herself in a position to dialogue and network. She took the initiative to reach out to me. I tell people all the time, reach out to recruiters. You only need one or two. We need one job. That's all we're looking for. So you might strike out 99 times, but if you get the 1% rate, it's you're not going to regret it. And so I totally agree with these guys. Every day there's more opportunities to go network and get involved, and to network in the way that you're comfortable. You don't have to get on LinkedIn and reach out to strangers or get on these types of things or even go to meetups. You can sit behind your keyboard and forge your own personality, make some great connections, and then feel more comfortable to reach out to people in the other kind of more foreign ways after that.
Joe, it's so cool that you shared that story. I love it, absolutely love it. And I hope that the people who are watching are really paying attention to that, because I've heard that story from you, and I've also heard it from a number of people who I work with in terms of, just the importance of putting yourself out there and connecting with others who are in the space. As part of our Redefine event, we had Brian Krebs on yesterday. He was talking with Neil Bridges, who was our Chief Content Officer here at INE, and he was really echoing those exact same thoughts, just saying, you have to put yourself out there. You have to network. You have to, communicate with people who are in the space as well and forge those relationships. So I'm so glad to hear that story from you, Joe, and those echoed thoughts from you as well, Jerry and Sunil. I want to speak, again to the students here, specifically those who are looking maybe to change their careers. How easy or how challenging is it for a person to simply pull up stakes and change their career and enter the tech field? Do they have to have a hugely tech background, or are there resources out there where somebody can say, hey, I've been doing this job and you know what, I got laid off during the pandemic, or is there a space for me here? I'll let you guys work it out as to who wants to start.
Sunil and I were talking about that before the show, because he and I both went through career changes, obviously, and kind of into recruiting. And Sunil, I mean, I didn't actually get to hear you talk about, your journey, but I was curious about some of the hurdles that you kind of faced, because I told you mine. I just sort of blacked out for like 3 days and changed careers and woke up in a new state. A little less dramatic than that, but I'd like to hear about kind of your journey.
Yeah, man. I mean, for me, it was kind of odd. Like, I was in data science for about 12 years at Citi and eBay, had a lot of fun doing, working on advanced analytics and all. But I felt like I had a calling. It just came to me that I felt that there was a lot of recruiters that really didn't understand the specifics of the jobs that they were trying to fill. So that was my value add. And, to answer Catherine's question in terms of how does one make a career transition, right? Boy, it is not easy. Like, it's not like you drink a protein shake or something and boom, you can get into this career. Candidates oftentimes ask me, Sunil, I was in marketing strategy, or I was, a far-fetched career, right? How do I get into analytics? That's hard. I think in our space, in data science, go get your master's, go get your business and analytics degree, okay? And then get that entry-level job and work yourself up. Or you can get, some certificates or get some, courses and get your foot in the door. If, say, you're giving up a $150,000 job as a nurse, okay, and you expect to make the same coin as a data analyst or a data scientist, you're in for a rude awakening. You're going to have to take a significant pay cut, right? So you have to be able to do that if you want to follow your passion. I kind of give you a long-winded answer, but I hope you got it.
I think that's great. I think it's very candid, and I think it's a reality check for those who need to hear it. It's not impossible, but there are certain challenges, Jerry.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. There are massive challenges, and I mean, you got to be honest. Like, if you're making a career change, why are you doing it? I mean, are you unhappy? Because I mean, and that's fine, but then it's not because of the money, right? But you can get back to whatever, for most people, you can get back to the salary that you're making. It will take time. I would argue that in the data science field, I would suspect it might take a little longer to get there because of just the sheer the things you have to learn in order to level up and get there. Whereas in cybersecurity, it's a little bit more well-defined a space in that there are specialties. So you can really niche down and become a mobile, like an Android OS pen tester. And, you focus on that for 3 years, and all of a sudden you just jump the line to the front where you're like the leading expert on it, right? That's kind of an extreme example, but you get my point. You don't have to become a master at each level before you can level up to the next one. You can specialize and niche down. Now, I do want to answer your original question, Catherine, because I feel it's important. I was doing a talk with Alyssa Miller, who's a wonderful practitioner in the cybersecurity space. And the question was around soft skills. And Alyssa actually said, like, I don't like the term soft skills. I like to call them transferable skills, and gave a really great example, right? So say you're a Starbucks barista, right? Which is retail, and you want to pivot into cybersecurity, right? You have to break down and kind of logically look at what you're doing, right? Okay, so you take orders and you make coffee. Okay, that doesn't really map into cyber. Well, like, let's think about it for a second. You interface with a variety of different personalities. Okay, so you probably have decent communication skills. Check. You got in cybersecurity, unless you're doing forensics, you can't be hidden in a closet, right? You have to go out and talk to people, especially the business. Communication. Then you're dealing with like multiple orders all at the same time and rush hours hitting and stuff like that. So you can deal with stress. You can deal with complex, different situations. Maybe you work in some kind of analytical angle based on the things you've done. So don't discount whatever it is you've done. If you're a marketing executive, if you're a barista, look at what the actual kind of abstraction is of what you're doing and how it can apply in a value add to an employer. That's what you really should always be thinking about. What is this employer's challenge, and what have I done that can help them solve their challenge? You want to be their champion. You want them to look at you and go, yes, you're gonna fix my problem. I want you, right? And I'm speaking slightly kind of high level, but that's my point. Like, you need to look at what you've done and how you can map it. That way you don't start at ground zero and have to build yourself back up. You already have bricks. All you do is tear the wall down. The bricks are still good. You can stack them back up really quick and boom, like you can again, hack your career. There's ways to do it.
Joe, I know you mentioned this briefly, but you changed careers. You were an elementary school teacher and then had a bit of an experience and changed into what you're currently doing. But I'm curious maybe what your biggest piece of advice would be for someone who is considering doing that, or maybe who's in the middle of doing something like that. What's one big lesson you learned that you'd love to pass along?
Well, I think Jerry hit it on the head in like knowing what's your motivation. I mean, I was definitely not running from teaching. That's something I wanted to do since I was 16. And my first, class, they're third graders. They are graduates of college this year. Still in touch with some of them, and it, I don't feel that old, but man, I do when I catch up with some of them. But the thing was, I mean, I knew I had to make a change. I had a kid. I was literally just like walking around outside, just like hoping I find money on the ground and just broke. I knew I had to make a change, but I had no idea what I wanted to do. I got lucky. I got really lucky to stumble into what I do at HuntSource specifically. I hated recruiting. I found after 2 years I hated it. I had no plan. I had a terrible job of writing my resume. The first bullet was that I can write 96 words per minute, the most useless information you could ever put on. I didn't know who to ask. Now, I've been doing this for years. I have people write to me all the time where they're like, hey, last night this guy wrote to me, what can I do to get started? That is such an ambiguous question. I think that you need to put some research in to know exactly like how to whittle down and narrow down your search and the types of questions. The more specific you are when you're reaching out to strangers like me or Jerry, or you're interacting with other people that are also on their journeys, have some specific questions, not very broad, generic questions, because A, you're going to get ignored a lot of times, and B, people are going to be like, well, I don't know how to answer that. So knowing your why, but something that Jerry said, you have to show what you've done. Don't hide the experience that you think is irrelevant. Own that experience. You have no other choice. Own it, as long as you're proud of it. If you're not proud of it, then don't say that either. But hide it. And then, but I mean, like, talk to people. Like, I get resumes sometimes of guys that are like UPS drivers, right? And then I'll reply to them and I'll just say, hey, I'm not sure if, you're looking to go into cybersecurity, but I got this resume from you and I thought I could, give you a couple tips. And they're like, yeah, I'm really passionate about this and this. And like, that did not show up on the resume at all. So there's no way I could have known that. You could have just been a drive-by resume. So talk to people like me, take it with a grain of salt. Talk to people like Sunil and Jerry, take it with a grain of salt. Get lots of conversations with lots of salt and put that together and make yourself your own opinion for how you want to sell yourself, what you want to do, but be as specific as you can. That was like 14 answers to your question.
That's okay. We'll take them all. And hopefully, I'm putting myself in the position of a student or someone who's potentially looking at changing careers. And I think that those are such valuable responses. I want to get to, address those who are already in the tech field, right? So you're very happy in your job, in your profession, in your career path, all that kind of stuff. How important is continued training in this space? Because we know that technology is changing, right, like so fast, but some of the basic building blocks are not. So how essential is ongoing training to continuing in your journey? Jerry, we'll start with you here.
Yeah, I mean, from a cybersecurity perspective, if you're not continuously developing and staying informed of current, current events like Colonial Pipeline, et cetera, like that, you're doing yourself a major disservice, and you're basically just pulling over in the breakdown lane on the career highway and just letting other people pass you by. Like staying trained is absolutely critical. Going back to what we just said a few minutes ago, cloud, right? So I work in an Azure space now. I had to get trained up and learn how to use Azure. Just because I've got experience in education and stuff like that doesn't mean that I just become pre-qualified to understand how to use Azure. So you really do have to continue to develop. And also I would really tell people, check your ego at the door. Be humble, right? I mean, nobody knows everything, and it really you need to be like comfortable with that and realize that you need to continue to develop and get education and get training and those type of things and explore a little bit, right? So I'm not a penetration tester, which is kind of the offensive side of the house. I don't have any professional need to do that type of work, but in order to better understand how to defend, which is more focused on what I do pen testing stuff, and I have taken pen testing training and built labs and done those type of work because it allows me to be a more well-rounded practitioner, even though I don't necessarily need it to execute my job function. So it's very, very important is the key takeaway.
Sunil, I'm curious from your perspective as a recruiter, how much you see employers valuing ongoing training for tech staff. Is this something that's kind of like a given in the industry, or is it seen as something more of a perk at certain companies? Companies will say, well, we offer you ongoing training, or is this something that really at this point companies are getting the message, we need to be doing this?
Yeah, I mean, twofold, right? Number one, it's absolutely critical. Everyone's seen a standard, bell curve, right? I hope you can see it. You'll see those individuals that were at their peak of their career, and because of their inability to keep up with the current trends and technologies, now those same people that were total comping at $250,000 to $400,000 are now willing to take a job for like $120,000 on base, okay? Because they were not relevant. I'll give you an example in data science. I used to code SAS. I wrote a lot of my code in SAS, all right, and SQL. Those skill sets, I cannot believe it, but fast forward 15 years later, they're irrelevant. Or SQL is obviously there, but SAS, unfortunately, there's a lot of companies using that language anymore, right? It's more R and Python. So all the students out there, even the senior staff that's been working, be on top of the technical skills. It's going to serve you in the long run. It's going to give you a lot of fruits. Okay. Now, in terms of companies, when I'm placing candidates, those are always perks, right? Candidates don't want to necessarily forking out $2,000 to $3,000 per course. It'd be great if a hiring company can say, you know what, Sunil, we like you as part of our benefits program we'll give you a $10,000 allowance, just take whatever courses you want. Employers like that because you're going to be able to get the job done a lot quicker and more, I guess you're going to be more efficient. Employees like that because guess what? You're padding up your resume or your tool belt. Now you have a new skill set to add, right? So I cannot stress this enough. Always be in the current. If you don't, you will definitely be looking in on the backseat and scratching your head like, what's going on? Why can't I land this gig that I think I'm qualified for?
Yeah, continue staying current and staying relevant. We're getting some great questions from our audience, so I want to get to a few of those before we run out of time here. And Joe, I think this is a great question for you, actually. Although feel free, guys, Jerry and Sunil, feel free to weigh in here as well. But I wanted to start with Joe. This is a question from Ben Sherrill Q. Different perspective, and this is addressing the degrees and education. I agree with, he says, I agree with not needing a degree to get into the field. What are your takes on being able to achieve that higher role, director, CISO, CTO, CIO, without a degree?
Great question. Definitely different answer. I think that that there's still a different expectation at that level, depending on the type of the role, though, that you're going to do, because some of those positions that are at that level and title, they're very different with expectations than a similar role with the same title at a different company. One of those might be a salesperson that needs to be selling, and you're the chief information security officer, but you're really a business development person. You're a face of a company that's going to go get them some contracts. Then there's a chief information security officer for small to mid-sized company that is hands-on. You know, they're actually in there in the architecture as well. They're very close to things. An MBA is probably not going to help you a whole lot with some of that. So it's just, I do think that you are still going to see a pretty high level of expectations, especially for some of the bigger companies. But as I said before, you will have a few people that really crack through, and they sort of change the game. You know, if someone gets in there without a degree and does an amazing job, what's your argument now? You don't have an argument for it. So it's just going to take some people to be really successful in championing for that.
Sunil, I know you come at this from a bit of a different perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I cannot disagree. With Joe, he's so on the money with this. If you want to go up the corporate ladder or get into that, director, senior director, and C-suite, by golly, I mean, if you don't have an advanced degree, forget about a bachelor's, an advanced degree, you're in for a rude awakening. Now, it's not. For the startups, maybe they might be a little bit more okay with it, but if the more Fortune 1, 2, 3s, it's a big deal.
I just want to take a moment to congratulate you, Sunil, and I don't think I've heard the phrase "by golly" since I was about 10 years old at my grandmother's house. So thanks for bringing that back.
You got it. I'll take that. That's great.
Jerry, just to kind of bring it back to that point, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well, because you come at this from a completely different perspective than Joe and Sunil.
Yeah, I really agree with them in that there is a, like kind of an invisible barrier that you will encounter if you do not have those degrees, right? So I said earlier, you could have an amazing, successful career without a bachelor's degree, and I stand by that 100%. But if you want to seek out those kind of management level positions and ultimately the CISO, you're going to encounter some struggles and some challenges, both with the way that the business perceives you and the way your peers would perceive you at that level, whether that's appropriate or not. Unfortunately, it's the reality in the current climate. I'll also say, follow your passion though, right? So just because the job you want, say you want to just be like the world's best pen tester, right? And you don't need that degree. But if you're super passionate about the field or about developing yourself or whatever, don't just dismiss higher education or those degrees, because even if you don't see a value in it now, if you work for a company that's going to pay for some education or you get an opportunity to take it, nail it, because the one thing with higher ed versus certifications, a certification could expire. You could be doing, you have CCNA and you don't do anything with networking, so your actual validity of being a CCNA doesn't really matter. With a degree, no one can ever take it away. It doesn't expire. You just have it, and it can only help you, right? Again, you can have a successful career without it, but if you have it, it doesn't hurt in any capacity, and it can only help in most cases. And I just want to add one other thing. This is harking back just a little bit, but I took a note. If you're trying to pivot in the field, you don't need a bachelor's degree in technology or in computer science or in software engineering. You can have a bachelor's degree in accounting. Heath